Keeping stories alive. For every culture to continue to exist, it must have cultural sustainability. Cultural sustainability is the act of continuing to practice the customs, language, and traditions of a particular culture. You may celebrate a certain day that is important to your family every year, year after year. This is part of your culture and keeps your culture going. Even during devastating challenges such as an invasion of Europeans and removal from their homelands, Native Americans of all cultures practiced and continue to practice cultural sustainability. Through storytelling, art, and learning and relearning Native languages, Native Americans keep their stories and their cultures alive. This next part is called storytelling. Storytelling is a very important part of Native American cultures. Origin stories told in the oral tradition preserve the history of a people. They remind people where they come from. This instills a sense of pride and validates a person's identity. It sends the message to Native American children that they are part of something bigger than themselves. Storytelling connects people today with their ancestors. Stories are not only entertaining, but they also communicate cultural values like being kind, practicing patience, and protecting the environment, all of which are also important in school as well. The practice of oral storytelling, too, is itself a cultural tradition. Long ago, Native American people preserved history orally because they did not use a written language. Now, Native Americans use the written word along with the oral tradition to tell their stories. Joseph Bruchac is one such storyteller. He writes the stories of the Abenaki people and other Native American groups. Though his grandfather was Abenaki, he never told Joseph the Abenaki tales. But when Joseph grew older and began to write, he decided to seek out native storytellers. He listened to their stories and wrote them down. Joseph Bruchac's stories are full of images and symbolism. A flute sounds like bird songs, breath, or wind in trees. A thumping drum feels like a heartbeat. Listeners often see themselves or someone they know in Bruchac's animal characters, such as a turtle who talks too much. Bruchac hopes his stories will give listeners a deeper understanding of how all life on Earth, plants, animals, and people, is linked, as well as the importance of treating each other with respect. He says, when a good story is told, it goes into a person's heart and remains there. And here he is right here, fascinating listeners with the story and the characters he creates. That's him telling the story right there. Preserving language and traditions. Practicing cultural customs and traditions is another important part of cultural sustainability. Native Americans practice ceremonies, sing songs, and perform dances that their ancestors did. Native Americans also make art and tools in the same ways they have for hundreds of years. The Chickasaw artisans. In the Chickasaw Nation, people make traditional art out of gourds. And artists might fill the gourds with dried beans to make them sound like rain. Some of the gourds are made to sound like thunder when you shake them. Chickasaw artisans also make traditional pinch pots out of clay. These pots can be used to hold food, water, and other items. And some would say artisans instead of artisans. The native scholars of Chicago. The Chicago area includes parts of their homelands of the Miami, Potawatomi, and Illinois people. Many descendants of these people still live in Chicago, along with other people who identify as Native Americans or Alaska Natives. These communities have formed a network of organizations that serve and uplift Native people. One of these organizations, found in 2007, is the Native Scholars Project. Native Scholars in an after-school tutoring program where Native American children receive instruction in Native language, history, and culture. Children get their homework, sing songs in their native languages, and create traditional artwork. The program's goal is to promote a sense of identity in children who know they are the Native American heritage and want more instruction in traditional ways in history. Keeping languages alive. Language is one of the most important parts of a culture. A culture's language includes conservation styles, humor, and spirituality. Estimates show there are between 100 and 200 native languages, but that are still spoken in the United States. But many of these are only spoken by a small number of people, many of whom are over the age of 70. When these speakers die, these languages could die with them. A big part of the culture would die as well. We'll finish the last part reading that as a class.